Now, with 4 more candidates for you to meet. This is for election debate 2024. We have Councillor Michael Cahill of Fianna Fáil. We have Cleo Murphy, who runs for the Green Party. We have Deputy Danny Healy-Rae, sitting TD and independent, of course, and Mike Kennedy, who's voting, or will be voting if he gets into the Dáil, but he is running for the Labour Party. Kerry, good morning to all of you, and thanks very much for coming into us on the programme and taking time out of your busy canvases. I'm going to start with the issue of housing this morning, because it seems to be the one that's coming up from talking to different canvassers and teams around the county most often on the doorsteps. I'll start with you on this one, Michael Cahill. You're looking to represent Fianna Fáil, to be hopefully from your point of view, a government TD. What would you say to those who suggest that, look at the housing stats for Kerry, there's thousands of people on the housing waiting list, some of them have been on it for years. There have been increases in rent to the tune of between 6 and 10% in the last year. House prices are climbing, supply just isn't getting there, despite your party promising 5 years ago you would fix the housing problem. Why should people vote for another Fianna Fáiler to go in there, given your record on this?
Well, Fianna Fáil have in government introduced numerous schemes in regards to addressing the housing crisis. I'd like to point out, first and foremost, houses do not grow on trees. There's no probably about it, they are the most expensive investment by any individual or family. It's extremely difficult with rising costs to get a mortgage today and to secure the funding to build a family home. Obviously, a lot more needs to be done. I've called myself for low-cost sites to be introduced in all our towns and villages. I believe that we have to start building more affordable and social houses. There's no doubt about that. For the first time in a long time, we are building houses now. Many schemes are either finished or near completion in Cllr and Milltown and Killarney and many more areas. There are huge issues in regards to housing, and if I could just point towards, for example, Cllr, as they're called today. I mean, most of our villages today in Kerry Today are not serviced. Many more are at capacity, including my own village of Glimbe, for some 20 years plus now. I mean, this is absolutely outrageous what's happening.
But why haven't Fianna Fáil sorted that? Well, there's two problems. There's a problem with utilities, there's a problem with ESB and Irish Water. What I'm hearing is they're slow. They're slow even for individual householders, and expensive when you're trying to get connections, let alone for the major projects you're talking about. Your party's in government meant to fix those problems, get them moving quicker.
There was a national scheme announced there earlier this year, and I was delighted to be involved in getting Beaufort, for example, included. There was 50 million announced. There's some over 6 million for Beaufort. There are huge issues in Beaufort. I'm just giving Beaufort as an example. You have Culmagurt Avenue. We're trying to address issues where the developers are long gone, and where we have many derelict estates and all of that, and slowly but surely we will be addressing those issues, but there's a need for huge investment. There's a commitment there by government, by Fianna Fáil, and specifically in regards to the 14 billion Apple Fund. I actually called, and you probably saw it yourself there, Jerry, some time ago now, for up to 2/3 of that funding to be given towards housing.
Yeah.
And I believe
you're promising 300,000 houses in the next 5 years.
Yes.
Do you think people believe you can deliver on that? With all the problems, lack of labour, planning issues, all of those things?
We're coming from the crash, and we're coming from COVID, which had a huge bearing on the development of housing in our county. I'm dealing with housing applicants for almost 35 years now, Jerry, and I fully understand the need and the requirements that are there. And I believe, with my experience, and if elected to Dáil, I will be able to have a significant input in regards to the delivery of housing here in Kerry. I have a proven track record of delivery.
Okay. All right, Danny Healy-Rae, can I ask you about the housing issue? What will you do if you're elected as an independent for the next 5 years, try and solve the problems we've been talking about here?
Well, first of all, Johnny, I've highlighted all the issues going back the 8 years that I've been in Dáil. And sadly, and if we could add together all this time spent talking about housing up there, we'd have a Rockefeller Centre going up all the ways to the moon. But sadly, it's not happening in the ground. And first of all, we have to talk with social housing, yes, and there's a certain amount of those being built. Not clearly not enough.
Yeah.
But the one group of people that are being left out totally and absolutely in Kerry is people that want to build or buy a house for themselves. They just can't come up to that level. And when they reach the age of 29 or 30 and they realise this, there's no affordable sites. Maybe there is in Dublin or somewhere else, but they're not here in Kerry. Our service sites.
Are you talking as well about people who are an option, maybe, if you're talking building it up, but also being able to buy somewhere in the private sector?
That's it.
Private. They don't qualify for social housing. There's no estates of that type being built in this county.
Not at all. People were hoping, and we're glad that there's so many houses being built in Killarney, but many people were eyeing those that some of them would be affordable, that people could try to buy them themselves. But that's not happening in town in Kerry. And to compound the matter, they can't get planning permission because of the planning laws and the planning regulator. They can't afford to build a house, and they can't get planning permission to build a house. Imagine, 7 miles east of Killarney, it's deemed to be in an area that's under strict urban generated pressure.
Yeah.
7 miles, 5 miles east of Cllr. The same story around Kinmare, Dingle, all those places. And the councillors, to be fair to all of them, they did their best in that regard. But the planning regulator refused point blank. They didn't want it extended out.
So how would you fix that? If you get back into another 5, other than highlighting it, what could you do to try and fix that?
Well,
if you're part of a future government arrangement,
a future arrangement.
What would you do?
Well,
scrap the planning?
Certainly, I'd change. I'd talk to the planning regulator and make him see sense, because it's not fair that people that are educated to a certain level and I'll just say masters in their own field at 29 and 30 years of age, they have to face the boat or face the plane and get out of here because they can't see themselves ever owning a house, or which people, tis a fairly reasonable request to have a house of their own, because your home is your castle. But if you're in a rented house, it's never your own. And that's another thing. The Department of Housing now have insisted that any new house built after 2015 by the local authority, you can never purchase it for yourself. That always happened, the tin-in purchase. It was a great scheme. And there's
does that not harm housing, though, in social housing? The argument against what you're saying there is that if you allow people to buy their own house, then the housing stock of the council depletes over the years, and there's no houses for new families going on.
But what's wrong with the local authorities or the government building more social housing? Because people treat their houses better, and they add to the house when they get it if they know they're going to
own it one day.
And you see, there's several other things like rural cottages. No go. And even affordable service sites. No, they're not there. And you can't get planning permission if you do own a site. The only one that can get planning permission outside of towns and villages is farmers' sons and daughters, which I applaud. That's very good. But just the other thing is, a person with a site right beside them that owned it for years and years and are not in the farming, are not farming, they are denied that. That's very wrong.
Cleo Murphy, I'll come to you. Your party have been in power for the last 5 years. You promised a lot on the retrofitting scheme. It's starting to move, but too slowly for many. People are unhappy with the SEI in terms of the slowest and rollout of grants. You're promising much more money in that area and promising much more houses. Why should people believe 5 more years of the Greens will help?
Well, first of all, can we acknowledge what the effect of the housing problem, right? It underpins so many of the problems we have. It is the reason why we don't have enough staff in hospitality, in health, in education, because people aren't staying because they can't get a house. There's a problem that underpins that again, which Michael alluded to, which is the water problem and the wastewater problem. So we are suggesting in our manifesto now that we would look at integrated constructed wetlands as a solution to the water problem. And I've gone a step further, and I've written to the department to suggest that we would look at community-led integrated constructed wetlands for community-led wastewater treatment services, and I've put that into the department, and I further said that we could pilot it in Kerry, because there's a number of towns and villages around the place where feasibility studies have been done, and if we got the wastewater in Kerry, so we could be out of the traps early on this one with the idea that I've put forward. So if we could get that going, we could get the development going. We've seen it in Cllr in particular. We haven't been able to build houses for years, and now there is a wastewater treatment. So it's a problem. There's problems underpinning problems. The Green Party came to government with two particular housing solutions. One was the vacant properties, restoring vacant properties, because we all know, lads, from canvassing, it is flying in the face of God, the number of empty properties in this county. We have to get them back into use. We do that with a carrot and stick. There is funding to renovate them.
For the last 5 years, and their plans have been and programs have been introduced, and there's more promises now, but they've been clunky, problematic, bureaucratic, and slow. Yeah,
I think the thing we have learnt in government is that we need to streamline things better, and we need to get those grants out in phases so that people aren't having to put a lot of money out front themselves and then wait for the grant to come afterwards. So everything that we've introduced, we're streamlining it all the time, because they're good ideas, but you have to see how they work with the people. So we've done that, and we're proposing better streamlining. The other one I want to mention is the cost rental housing, because this is such a good idea. It's for people who don't qualify for social housing, but they're still struggling to pay rent in the private market. And if they had any bit of a break at all, they might be able to get a deposit together. So with the cost rental housing, you pay 25% less than the local market. Now, we don't have this in Kerry yet, but it has appeared over in Bantry. Other than that, it tends to be in the big urban areas. But on Sunday morning last, I went down to Bantry to have a look at it. And they're fine houses, cost rental. It'll be done on a lottery basis. But we need an awful lot more cost rental housing, because it gives people the break they need to get the deposit together to buy their own house.
Okay. Mike, it's a particular bugbear of yours, the reason perhaps maybe you're in politics in the first place, the issue of housing and planning. What will you do? What will Labour do to fix this problem if you get power?
Well, firstly, look, I'm the youngest candidate running in Kerry at the moment. It's my age group and younger than me that are struggling to get a house of their own here in Kerry, and all nationally. It's down to the failures of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael in the last few years that didn't address the issues and address them and treat the situation as it is. It's not a housing crisis anymore, it's a housing emergency. And me personally, I feel that it should be treated like an emergency, and a cross-party coming together and treat it like COVID was treated, as the national emergency. I was just going to ask you,
should it be done the way COVID is?
Yes, I think it should. And
change rules overnight.
It needs to be addressed. I have friends that are locked out of the housing market. I have friends that can't get planning on their lands. I couldn't get planning on my family farm. 500 years of the Kennedys been on our land, and I was pushed out off the land. We were the lucky ones. We've managed to buy a house in the last few months in Lisbole village, inside in a housing estate. We've great neighbours, but for me, my mother passed away only a few months ago. My father's now at home on his own. These are issues that I'm seeing daily. I was in Listowel Mark the last day. I met a young man and his father, and the young man was heading off to Australia because he couldn't get planning on his lands. Housing is the biggest crisis and emergency this country has at the moment. Cleo touched on it. It's the cause of our shortage of jobs in our hospitals, our shortage of jobs of teachers nationally that they're leaving, and all the young people I know. I played football with Lisbole up until last year, and the bulk of the young people I played football with are all saying that they have no future. They're looking at immigrating because the issues that are there in housing is coming down to. I keep hearing about affordable housing. The realistic thing of it is Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, under their current policy, we can't have affordable housing anywhere in this country where the population is less than 10,000. This needs to change. It needs to change. Like we're hearing housing for all for years. There's no housing for anyone at all in this country at the moment. And look, housing to me is, I'm very passionate about. Like, so many people are locked out of the housing market in this country. I worked in hospitality, and my wife worked in hospitality for years until I started my business in 2016. We were just over the threshold for social housing. We couldn't get social housing. We couldn't get a mortgage to buy a house. I've so many friends that are like that now. Supply is on the floor and prices keep on climbing.
And will Labour change that?
Yes, we will. Yes, we will. Look, we've been calling for the last 2 years, and we were the first party that were ambitious enough to say that we need to deliver 50,000 new homes. If we get into power, look, we'll use 6 billion from the Apple tax windfall to transform the Land Development Agency and let it plan for the decade of home building that on public land that is needed. We'll use 1 billion of the Apple tax windfall for water infrastructure and land servicing, which is another big reason, as you've all touched on it here, we don't have the infrastructure in this county. We don't have the infrastructure in most towns and villages in the country. And look, if I get into government, I'd be fighting tooth and nail on this to try and get people homes again in this country.
All right, we're going to hear more on this. We're going to hear more on cost of living and other issues as well. If you've any questions or queries for the candidates, get in touch with us on the programme. We'll have more with our panel after we take these. Yeah, keep your comments and views coming into us. We've got 4 of our candidates in studio with Cleo Murphy of the Green Party, Mike Kennedy of Labour, we've Councillor Michael Cahill of Fianna Fáil and Deputy Danny Healy-Rae, Independent. Lots of people getting in touch on housing. I didn't get much schooling, Jerry, but even I know you can't build houses without water and sewage infrastructure. The builders have told the government this, but nothing changes. The mind boggles. Another listener gets in touch and says, can the candidates outline what their policies and thoughts are on the lack of childcare in Kerry? In particular, my area at Cllr, there's a lack of childcare in the area. Less than a handful of creches in town with an ever expanding population. We'll get to that one. A listener says as well, Jerry, that elderly man will lose his living alone allowance if he's on it. If he moves in with his son, the system is all wrong. That's in relation to what Mike Kennedy had to say. Okay, we'll get to those issues and more. I want to talk though about cost of living right now, and I'll start with you on this one, Danny Healy-Rae. Car insurance is up, health insurance is up. We've seen over the last number of years, even though inflation is down below almost 1% now, it was very high. So food is more expensive, eating out is more expensive, hotel rooms are more expensive, and electricity is the big one. What will you do to change that or address that if you're elected for the next 5 years?
Well, I have to say, Jory, the cost of living can be attributed to the cost of fuel, and that's driving up everything. It's driving up transport. And in fairness, the government, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael and the Greens, they assisted in a great way in this increase. Billions
of euro in one-off payments and other payments to help people.
The cost of...
Oh, you mean they assisted in creating the problem?
They caused it. There's no pulling back from that. Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael and the Greens' insistence have driven up the cost of fuel, the day-to-day, the people that are getting out in the morning. And the fuel was already expensive enough. But now they're adding carbon tax on it and so much every year till 2030. That's totally unfair, because the idea of the carbon tax in the first place was to disincentivize people from using fuel. But when it got so dear, they still have to use it, Johnny. They still have to go to work in the morning from places like Turrinamult in Guinea-Willa or Cllr in Scotland, or whether it is below in Shneem and Bucar or all the different places. They have to get out in the morning, and they have only one way to go. It's clearly proven. I'm not against electric cars, but it's clear enough now that they're not effective and they're not, suitable for long journeys, and there's problems with them down the line as well with the battery and all that kind of thing. But that has led to the massive increase in the cost of living, and it's unfair. And I think it's totally and absolutely unfair that Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, just to hold high office, have succumbed to the Green Party in this regard.
I'll allow Cleo Murphy come in on that, but just before I do, what will you do if you're elected for the next 5 years?
I can tell you one thing. The carbon tax will be gone first off. And you see, and that's God's gospel truth. I fought against it every day that I was above that.
But you would have to be in government.
I voted against the climate action. I voted against the carbon tax. That's my record, and that will always be my record. I'll stand up for the people that are getting out in the morning and going to work and trying to take their children to school and all the different things that they're doing.
Cleo Murphy, the Green Party, carbon tax causing all the problem.
Okay, carbon tax.
Cost of living.
Carbon tax is less than 15 cents on a litre of petrol. Sorry, Danny, that's the figure. That's the actual breakdown of what a litre of petrol costs. The excise is 54 cent, the VAT is 32 cent, the carbon tax is 14 cent. 1469. Okay, so it's there and it's a component, but it is very small. If you were to take it off, Danny, it wouldn't make a whole pile of difference to the price of petrol, is the truth. Now, where is that carbon tax going? Well, it's going to the fuel allowance. Right, so the people who are getting a fuel allowance, who are in fuel poverty, they're getting 99 million of it. It's going to the farmers. There's 140 million of the carbon tax going into the acre scheme. It's going to retrofitting.
And pay the acre scheme.
Yeah.
Now with the acre scheme, right, there was more people interested in going onto it than was initially. There was 30,000 people that the department was expecting to have to administer the funds for, and 46,000 wanted to
You're
get
saying
it.
it's a sign
and
of
Charlie,
success.
it kind of is, and they had let me just finish, because they are just having a problem in the Department of Agriculture catching up with the admin. But next year they're expecting it'll be much smoother. There's far fewer schemes. There was a lot of schemes opened, but really and truly, that is where your carbon tax is going, to the farmers' acre scheme, right? And there's huge interest in that. And once it gets over its teething problems with the payments, which I think it by and large
there's
is
still farmers waiting for payments.
Yeah, we'll let you finish. I'll bring you in, Mike.
But like, you have to think, the carbon tax is one of the few taxes that is ring fenced. It's not going into the exchequer, so you can see. Clearly.
I'll let you in, Danny. I will let you in.
Yeah, but it's specified where it's going. It's going for farming schemes. It's going to people in fuel poverty, which is hugely important, and it's going to the retrofitting. Yeah.
Okay, so that justifies the carbon tax.
Oh, I think it does. Yeah, I think it does. And Danny's talking about electric cars not working. Some people in Kerry are using electric cars, and some people that you're talking about going to work in the morning, Danny, they do have a short enough journey. And there's a huge number of people now using the buses. If you're living in town at all, any town, you can get a bus early in the morning. People are absolutely loving the local link and the bus errands. There used to be 3 buses a day, Danny, going from Clr, Kilgarvan into Killarney, and now there are 12. But we're not bringing buses all the way up there, and they were trying to do the planning so that people aren't living too far out from the services. So having people in town makes them less car dependent.
Mike Kennedy, your answer on cost of living and that wider debate.
Yeah, well, look, the cost of living, as a father of 4 young kids, I've seen it myself. Every day I go in to do my grocery shop, it's just gone astronomical. You speak to pensioners, they're afraid to turn on their lights, put on their heating, because they just don't have enough disposable income with the way the cost of everything has gone. Again, that comes back to Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the Greens in government. There's one-off payment of double payments for their pension. They should have looked at increasing these people's pensions. The elderly people at home are struggling. Not only the elderly, young families, right across the board, people with disabilities, these one-off double payments are no good. It was like, and everyone's seen what it was for. They were trying to buy the electorate coming into an election. What they should have done with these is increase the pensions, increase those payments in line with inflation, so that these people can actually live and not on the breadline like a lot of them are, and a lot of them are struggling to put food on the table and turn on the lights in their homes.
And what about the billions in payments to help people through tough times?
Well, look, they haven't done enough, to be honest with you, Jory. Like, they have to be ambitious on these things. Like, our electricity companies, the windfalls of profits that they're making, these need to be held to account. We need to go after them and get a windfall tax on these. The data centres, like, they're using over 20% of our electricity. We need to hit them with a higher tax and take money off them, so that we can put it back into the ordinary people of this county and this country's pockets, that they're not struggling with. Coming back to the fuel, back to the fuel, that is a big issue. It's a big issue for a lot of people living in rural areas, and I will give it to the Greens in Corkagween and West Kerry. We have a great local link service now, and it has helped an awful lot of elderly people that they've now parked up their cars, that they can come out and get on the bus, and that is one positive that has come out of it. The one negative is that if you want to go from Dingle to Killarney, it's a 2-hour journey, whereas if you jump in your car, you're in Killarney in an hour.
Okay. Michael Cahill, your response to what Danny Healy-Rae said, your response on what you do in cost of living, and Danny Healy-Rae suggesting the green tail is wagging Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil dog.
Look, Jerry, the cost of living crisis is right up there with the housing crisis, based on what I'm getting on the doorsteps and my canvas teams. Fianna Fáil have, in response, I suppose, to the fact that everything is going up right across the board, Fianna Fáil and government have introduced a number of measures. families will receive a double child benefit payment.
It's not enough.
Hold on now, let me speak. Those on the working family payment will receive a lump sum of 400. All social welfare payments are going up 12 euros a week. There's an increase in the fuel allowance means test disregard from 524 for a single to 1,048 for a couple. I have an issue actually with that because we are entering now a very cold period and we must protect our elderly. In my book, it costs exactly the same to heat a home for a couple as for a single person living alone as it does for a couple.
So you change that. And what do you say in the carbon tax, though, Michael Cahill? What do you say in the carbon tax? The accusation Danny Healy-Rae.
That is something I will pursue.
Should you have paused the carbon tax to reflect the trouble that people are in?
Look, in government we have introduced a number of measures. In regards to, can I just touch on transport?
Very briefly, I need you to answer my question.
Transport costs have been reduced by 20%. I would have pursued, for example, an increase in. I call for, and you've seen it happening, Jerry, yourself there, a hop-on, hop-off bus service on the Ring of Kerry, for example. There are numerous extra buses now. The Green Party, in fairness, would have been involved in pursuing that as well. But that is great for business. It's great for local people. It's great for our visitors. Before, you could go one way on the Ring of Kerry and you'd be waiting 3 or 4 hours to get a bus going back the other way. But can I just say also... Did
you make an error in the carbon tax, though?
I don't think so.
The excess duty, Jerry, I think.
I don't think so, Jerry. But can I just say that there's a knock-on effect in regards to the cost of living crisis with small businesses and medium-sized businesses. They're struggling big time. I have been very vocal in regards to the hospitality VAT rate being returned to 9%.
Yet your government didn't do it.
I'm getting issues in every town and every town and village.
Promises, election promises.
Commercial. Look, I didn't interrupt anyone.
Yeah.
But just to say that I've been very vocal in regards to commercial rates, and some of them have double, triple, quadruple. Jerry, you know it well in your own town. In every town, it's Clognan, Carsween, Killarney, etc., Dingle, and so on. And look, if given the opportunity, and I'm going to put my trust in the people and I'm going to fight this, I am fighting this election on my track record of delivery, Jerry.
Okay, all right, Danny Healy-Rae, let you back in briefly.
Sorry, there could have been a lot more done for energy. For instance, Shannon LNG was promised by Minister Martin and Minister Foley, or Teresa Martin at that time. That hasn't happened. We've no place to store gas when to buy it and store it when it's cheaper. Tackling the small people in the ground, nothing being said to the big airlines. And we've only one resource, really. Natural resource, that's farming, and that's been curtailed. We're now paying farmers to leave their land idle. That's a crime, that's criminal. And the other thing, from the minute he closed Bornemona, and this is Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the Greens, from the very day they closed Bornemona, the cost of electricity has gone up day by day because he have no control over it anymore.
Okay, well, what do you say on that point, Jen? Just on that point.
The bit of turf.
Just on that point.
Traditions and generations of people survived.
What you've talked about is basically you're saying, look, we need to park the climate, and you're saying it's all down to the carbon. What would you say to the argument that people... just on that. What would you say to the argument that it's not just the carbon tax is a problem. It was the war in Ukraine. It was fossil fuel dependence which tied us to increasing prices. And if you say we need to bring down the cost of it, we'll keep using fossil fuel. And we're at the vagaries of international madmen like Vladimir Putin for the next 5 years.
Does it make sense to be transporting briquettes from Lithuania? Does it make sense to be considering
Sure, it didn't make sense to be bringing coal or oil.
The carbon footprint there? What's happening that? And to see, if we left thousands of acres of bog unused, They're alive now forever.
Bogs aren't going to put food on people's tables.
They're not. And it's an old argument when you think about the future.
Part of the cost of the cause of driving up the cost of electricity.
We're going to come back to this. I have to take a quick break. We'll get into it again. Stay with us with more time on the debate. Danny Healy-Rae, Cleo Murphy.
Get out of it, Danny. Get out of it.
We'll have more after
all you're doing is hurling on the ditch as usual.
We'll have more if we take these. We're talking with our panel of candidates. Cleo Murphy, I'm going to very briefly to you on cost of living.
Thanks very much. I'll be as quick as I can. Just to say that notwithstanding the fact that the cost of living is through the roof, it was a Green Party Minister, Roderick O'Gorman, who reduced childcare costs by 50%. It was a Green Party Minister, Eamon Ryan, who brought travel fares down by 20% and 60% for young adults. And it was the Green Party Senator, Pauline O'Reilly, who fought to have free contraception, free HRT and free IVF, because there's a hefty cost to being a woman, what Michael Healy-Rae might normally refer to as mom's purse, to help out with that. And just seeing as it is International Men's Day, can I wish the four of you a very happy International Men's Day.
Thanks very
much, Cleo.
Very kind of you. Okay, we're going to go to enterprise now. A listener asked, and it's about the cost of doing business in this county, in this country. What are the candidates' priorities for local enterprises in Kerry? Outlined our planned supports for new business. The cost of doing business, Cleo Murphy, in this country has gone up. We've seen high-profile places close, hospitality's under pressure. They were pleading with the government for the VAT rate to be maintained or reduced back down to 9%. They said it never should have been increased. Yet ye said no, and places are closing. What's your response?
Well, there's a number of costs that they talk about. They talk about VAT, they talk about PRSI, they talk about rates, and sometimes they talk about minimum wage. There's no argument on minimum wage. It has to be there in my view. However, the Green Party manifesto is proposing a full rebate on properties that have a rateable value of up to €15,000 and a 50% rebate for rateable businesses with a rateable value of 20,000, and I think that would go a long way towards easing the pressure on people.
Okay, all right, Michael Cahill, what's your response on what you'll do, given that the businesses are very, they feel that nothing was done for them in budget 2025 by Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the Greens?
Well, I suppose it's fair to say that other than the major announcement for Estellas here in Tralee, and that's very welcome, obviously, Jerry, because that's huge for North Kerry and indeed our county. I believe the IDA have done very little other than that. We have industrial land available around the county. If elected and in government, I will be promoting the setting up of businesses in these units or in these on these industrial lands around in different locations in Kerry. Look, Danny touched on Shannon LNG, and that's hugely important in it, particularly North Kerry, from Tarbert to Ballylongford, etc. There'll be over 600 construction jobs, and
promised for years, looks like it's about to get bogged down again.
And in fairness to current and former colleagues on Kerry County Council, Jim Finucane and Mike Kennelly and Mike Foley and Jimmy Maloney and others, indeed.
And Danny and Johnny Healy-Rae. I'm going to treat that like I've treated the Greenway. The Greenway down south, I'm known as the Greenway man, and I'm going to pursue with the same vigour the Shannon LNG, because it will be a game changer and a lifeline for North Kerry. And there's many more proposals and ideas that I have in mind. Look, I have a track record of delivery, Jerry, and that's what I'm standing in this contest for.
Did you leave businesses down, though, with VAT rates? All the while bringing in sick leave, parental leave. Simon Harris knows promised we'll have to look at these things and slow them down. You brought in too many costs all at the same time while not giving them what they really wanted.
Well, costs went up and everything, and the world economy, you know, the world had a lot to do with that, and so on and so forth. I have been more vocal than anybody else in regards to the support of medium and small businesses, particularly in relation to the 9% VAT rate. I do believe it should have been introduced in the government in the recent budget. It wasn't. I have and I am pursuing that with Jack Chambers. I had him down in Carseveen there recently. Also, in regards to commercial rates, look, I touched on that.
You're going to reduce that.
We have to support small and medium businesses.
I have to move it up. Mike Kennedy, your response.
Look, I suppose, we're a county where tourism is one of our biggest employers. It's most people that I know work in the tourism industry or retail industry in this county. The biggest issue is commercial rates. They've touched on it. For new business, I know when I started my new business in 2016, after coming out of a hospitality sector, there was no supports there for me. None. There needs to be more supports put in place for new businesses starting. I personally feel if I could get into government, I would be pushing for commercial rates to be abolished for the first 3 years of business for new businesses starting, and to be introduced on a tapered process after that, because when I started my business, I worked nights for 3 years in a bar and restaurant in Dingle just to have a wage to go home with at the end of each week, because it takes a young business at least 3 to 4 years to get off the ground. The other thing that nobody is talking about anywhere in the media, and it's the biggest white elephant in the room that's putting a lot of the small cafes and bars and restaurants out of business at the moment, is during COVID, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the Greens introduced the warehousing of the VAT and the tax. This is where now the revenue are coming in, and they're looking for it back right now, and these businesses don't have it, and it's closing places down all over the country, but especially here in our county. We've seen numerous cafes. If you walk around Tralee, Killarney, Cllr, Listowel, there's so many, Dingle even, there's so many empty units.
Introduce VAT forgiveness? Would you do away with all that?
What I think they should do with the exchequer, extend it, let them pay it gradually, not coming after them right now, looking for, so look, you owe so much for, they need to come back in and give these people a chance, because they struggled through COVID and they were given the chance, but now all of a sudden we need that money now, and it's putting businesses out
of ingredients and food and everything else is too high. Danny Healy-Rae, your response to that, what would you do for enterprise?
Our tourism business for the first time in years is struggling, and many businesses hoping and praying all the summer that the VAT rate would come down to from 13 to 9%. It hasn't done. And now we hear the government, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, saying they might bring it down to 11. That they might. But why didn't they do it in the budget? The other thing is the rates. Rates have doubled and tripled. I begged them myself on the floor of the Dáil to do something about it, because businesses just can't prevail. The energy up grant for new businesses can't apply. New businesses can't apply because they didn't apply for the increased cost of business grant. So that's hurting people that are trying to start out. But first of all, we should have seen after the businesses that are in trouble. And there are a lot of them that closed, that have been there for years and years, and many more of them are going to close. Self-catering businesses have been targeted, and they were providing a massive role in the provision of
tourist accommodation
for tourists. And the other thing, footfall has fallen dramatically this year in Kerry because of many of our 40% of our hotel beds have been taken up by immigrants, despite the fact that the government promised at the very start that there would be self-purpose accommodation.
State-provided accommodation.
And iota, that done. And we're the same now as when the crisis started, when the Ukraine war started. And we've a whole lot of asylum seekers coming from all other countries for different reasons. And we see that over 40% of them have come in here undocumented. That's galling for the people that are trying to work, and the footfall falling in our towns like Cllr.
Okay, you bring up migration. We can come to that after the break. We'll have more with our candidates after we take these. Okay, Cleo Murphy, the Green Party, you want to clarify one thing about the trip to Dingle on the bus, is that right?
Yeah, no, Mike was saying the bus from Dingle to Cllr is 2 hours. It's not, it's an hour and a half. And I know because I took it really recently going out to Dingle to Cllr.
Okay,
and I left
Cllr
at 2:35 and I was in Dingle at 4 p.m. But can I just say one other thing about the buses, Jerry, right? They have been fantastic, the service all around the county. I am terrified that if we return a Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael government without the Greens, they will row back on the investment. So I would say to the voters of Kerry, if you're fond of your buses, if you're fond of your local link, make sure you cast a number one vote for the Green.
Okay,
myself.
all right. Listener gets in touch with us here. Well, actually, we were talking about the issue of migration. I'll stay with you for the moment, Cleo Murphy. Roderick Gorman, in fairness to the man and the minister, he was thrown a number of of curveballs the minute he went into office and had to deal with a crisis, an unprecedented war in Ukraine, and then an unprecedented increase in the last 2 years or so, even though numbers are starting to pull back a bit now, international protection applicants. What about Danny Healy-Rae's point that you dealt with an emergency, it never went to a planning phase, and you promised to get either international protection applicants or Ukrainians out of tourism beds in this county and into state provided accommodation? You didn't do it.
Well, there is a
and it's harming tourism.
It's harming tourism. There's a rollback now. You see, it has also been of a benefit to tourism because the Ukrainians have really filled a gap in the hospitality staffing. I mean, they'd be very slow to let go of them in Carsavine now. You know what I mean?
And even in Dingle, I agree with Cleo. They filled a couple of jobs in the hotels. One hotelier told me they wouldn't have opened last year, only for them to
so they
fill the
felt with staff.
housekeeping.
But what about the point in footfall, Cleo Murphy?
Yeah.
Down because there's not available beds in Killarney, Dingle, in Kenmare, in Tralee.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're looking if we're back in government at a multi-agency approach to immigration, because it could get worse. You know, there could be more people when the climate emergency kicks in. You could have climate refugees as much as you have war refugees. So we do have to be more ready for it. But it is phenomenal what Roderick O'Gorman managed to do when there was not housing, to squeeze every last bed out of both the Red Cross scheme and I think it was the Petermount Ferry was the second scheme. To get holiday homes or second homes that were lying idle, to get those in. And I think it did happen that a lot of people who didn't want to get tied up with renting, which unfortunately actually took the option of the Ukrainian.
Okay, all right. Michael Cahill, can I ask you about this? Fianna Fáil are promising to get tougher at the border on migration. Why didn't they do it over the last 5 years?
Well, look, migration, Jerry, is going to be an issue that we're going to have to face forever. It's going to increase, if anything. Look, we're seeing the horrific stories on our national TV and world TV stations and of the slaughter of innocent people in Gaza, especially there now, and of men, women, and of men, and especially women and young children. Okay. It's absolutely horrific. Can I just say, in regards to Ukraine, it's mainly women and young children that are here, and elderly people. There are some men, but a lot of them have actually medical issues and so on and so forth. I'm aware of a particular case whereby the Russians captured a man, and he was beheaded. They accessed his phone and they sent a live recording of the event to his wife. They have 2 young children, aged 2 and 6. We were always a caring nation, Jerry. Yeah. And do we turn our backs on such people?
The humanitarian element of it.
Absolutely. 1,000%.
Okay. In the time left, Mike Kennedy, briefly on this.
Look, the government singularly failed on the issue, particularly as it relates to people applying for asylum. The failure has been exploited by certain forces wishing to divide us as a nation and as a people. Look, I suppose the big thing that people need to realise is that a lot of our jobs in our health service are filled by people that have come in here and have come here to work as our nurses, our midwives, as our doctors. We need migration. I had to immigrate back in 2009 after the crash, and a lot of my friends did. And look, we were welcomed into other countries. We had to work. You had to have a visa. You had to get through all that. But like the big thing that nobody seems to realise here is that the people looking for refugee asylum here in Kerry, not in Kerry, internationally in Ireland in 2023 was 13,000 people, representing 4.8% of the cases dealt with by immigration services. To put that into context, in 12 months to April of this year, 30,000 of our own Irish citizens have returned home as well. So like there is that, it's not immigrants.
Quid pro quo. Danny, final point to you on that.
First of all,
would you still close the border?
First of all, Johnny, the government, Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil and the Greens have signed away all control over the amount of immigrants that come in here with the immigration bill. And now Europe will have control and decide who takes how many. And you see, we know that there's 40% that have come in and they're not being sent back. And you see, the other thing, no purpose-built accommodation as promised for you.
As you made that point,
and you see, to be fair to all the other people, Irish and other people that are here and have been here for 20 years or more and on the waiting list or whatever, the tax incentive for renting to Ukrainians is 800 for them and nothing for our own
That
people
needs
that
to
are
be
looking
changed.
for a house.
Okay,
That's totally and absolutely unfair, Joe.
Gentlemen and lady.
Before I finish.
Yeah, very briefly, Danny, we're all the time.
I can't
We're over
understand
time.
in this debate why we handed some few words about health, because we all know
Danny,
the
we
situation,
talked-
and I was
we talked about it,
raising the doll, but you don't want to give me a chance.
No,
to
Danny,
get on
that's
about the
unfair.
health.
That's totally unfair. We talked about it for 10 minutes yesterday with your brother, who has similar views to you, who is Danny,
you're in the doll long enough, Danny. Why hasn't it been sorted?
Danny, we can talk.
You're in the doll long enough. You're there as long as
Gentlemen, Danny, I'll have
You're there long enough,
Danny, I'll say one
Shouting and
final word. If
roaring,
you could
Danny.
please silence. I'll say one final word. We can't talk about every issue on every debate. We only have an hour. We have 17 candidates in Kerry. We talked about it yesterday. We'll talk about it again in other debates. And we've publicised very often what you've had to say about health over the last 5 years. That's my final point. My thanks to the four of you for coming into us. Best of luck on the campaign trail and on November 29th. And thanks for talking to us this morning.
Thanks, Jerry.